Jazakumullah, thank you very much to Tawfiq Sahib for that wonderful introduction. I'm indeed humbled and honored. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Most worthy Chairman, most revered President, Ahmadiyya Muslim Association, South Africa, honored guests, dear sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be unto you with the mercy of Allah and His blessings. The last century marked the great divide between the old world and the new. The speed of the pedestrian will be accelerated to the speed of sound and, for many purposes, to the speed of light. Geographical distances between countries will be rendered insignificant. Globalization will become a reality. Man's faculties and capacities will be multiplied. Huge technological advances will be made in every field of human endeavor. Rivers and canals will be diverted. The moon and other planets will be reached. The sky will be laid bare. Indigenous communities living in isolation will be replaced by virtual communities living in cyberspace. Telecommunications and instant messaging on an ever-expanding array of topics across the virtual terrain of the World Wide Web and social media networks will connect humanity more than ever before. The irony, a very sad one, it must be added, is that despite all the mind-boggling material and technological progress made in every field of human endeavor, transforming a once disconnected world into a global village, the concept of world peace still remains an illusion. Indeed, we live in a world rent asunder by strife, where conflicts and warfare are commonplace, where economies have collapsed under the weight of inequality and political systems have ruptured by the force of their corruption, where world leaders, instead of finding lasting solutions to global problems, are busy fanning the flames of hatred and intolerance. For every level of human existence, be it individual, communal, national, and indeed global, it is acutely obvious that our modern world is devoid of peace and harmony. Restlessness and frustration, radicalization and extremism, oppression and exploitation, a violation of human rights, lack of trust in the future, and dissatisfaction with our heritage have become the hallmark of our modern world. The thin veneer of civilization can no longer hide the ugliness and the bitterness which are becoming ever more apparent. The contemporary world would also undergo a transformation in its outlook on life. Man would discard the worship of idols of wood and stones and would take up the worship of new gods fashioned by science and technology. The mind and the intellect will be supreme. The moral and the spiritual will be suppressed. The light of science will be bright. The darkness of the soul will be profound. Civilizations will be materially rich, but soulless and artificial. Societies will be technologically advanced, but lacking in spirituality and religious values. The concept of God will be repudiated, and religion will become an adventitious extra. What role, then, can religion play in achieving peace and harmony? A cursory glance across the religious landscape reveals a paradoxical sight. On the one hand, religion is losing its grip, with selfish individualism gaining strength, social responsibilities ignored, equity and justice on the verge of extinction, and truth fast disappearing. On the other hand, there is a powerful swing back in the direction of religious dogmas, with medieval rigidity and intolerance of opposing views, which threatens the peace of the world. Such a toxic atmosphere proves fatal to a healthy spirit of dialogue and the free flow of ideas. With a tarnished image, the first victim of this melee is indeed religion itself. Therefore, before examining any meaningful role that the religions of the world can play in providing peace to man in all areas of human activity, it is imperative, firstly, to critically examine the role of religion itself in establishing peace in the various sections of their own adherents, and also to adjudge whether they can learn to live at peace with each other. There is an urgent need for the religions to make a genuine and serious effort to remove misunderstanding between themselves. Islam, which literally means peace, has a lot to offer in the quest for peace and harmony. We shall rely heavily on the teachings of Islam in our discourse today, for it is our firm belief that Islam, the culmination of the evolutionary process of religion, contains in its fullness and perfection the divine guidance that can transform humankind from the depths of the earth to the loftier stations of civilization. We are duly cognizant of the fact that there is a lot of misunderstanding about religion in general and Islam in particular, with widespread misinformation and propaganda that Islam promotes the use of force for the spread of its ideology. Such words emanate not only from the opponents of Islam, but sadly also from medieval-minded Muslim clergy. It is most unfortunate and disheartening that, to a very large extent, the main reasons for this misunderstanding are the malpractices and misdeeds of certain misguided Muslims. Unless we reform religious attitudes internally and externally, religion will continue to play a very strong negative role rather than a beneficial positive role in our efforts to achieve global peace. Religion, which should play a leading role in establishing peace, removing misunderstanding between adherents of different sects and faith, cultivating decency and promoting the principle of live and let live, has unfortunately, in contemporary times, played a very minor and insignificant role, if at all, in the promotion of peace, yet in creating disorder and bloodshed and in causing misery and immense suffering. It has been a very potent and destructive force. The entire Muslim history is replete with such despicable episodes where Islam, the religion of peace, was itself employed to shatter the peace of innocent believers whose interpretation of certain aspects of Islam differed to how others would have them. The persecution of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Pakistan and other parts of the world is a stark reminder of the fact that this heinous problem lives on. It is important, the importance of reforming religious attitudes to such problems cannot be overemphasized. No global peace can be visualized without addressing these vital problems and redressing their faults. Since time immemorial, many philosophers have been dreaming of the unification of mankind as one human family. This concept has been entertained by political thinkers and sociologists alike, but nowhere has the idea been pursued with greater fervor than in the domain of religion. The concept of universality, as proposed by religion, not only transcends geographic and national boundaries, but also transcends time. For a religion to be capable of uniting mankind and establishing peace in the world, that religion must itself accept the universality of religion, in the sense that human beings, whatever their color, race, or geographic denomination, are all creatures of the same Creator. As such, they are equally entitled to receive divine instruction. This view obviates the concept of monopolization of truth by any one religion. All religions, whatever their name or doctrines, wherever they be found, and to whatever age they belong, have the right to claim the possession of some divine truth. Also, one has to admit that despite their differences in doctrines and teachings, religions are most likely to have a common origin. The same divine authority which gave birth to a religion in one area of the world must have also looked after the religious and spiritual needs of other human beings in other parts of the world and belonging to different ages. This exactly is the message of the Holy Quran. The Holy Quran declares, "There is no people to whom a warner has not been sent." Chapter 35, verse 25. It is manifestly clear that Islam does not monopolize truth to the exclusion of other religions, but categorically declares that in all ages and in all parts of the world, God has been looking after the spiritual and religious needs of mankind by raising messengers who delivered the divine message to the people for whom they were raised and commissioned. This attitude of Islam towards other religions can work as a very important uniting factor between the various religions and their followers. It is declared in unambiguous terms in the Holy Quran that it is not only Muslims who stand firm on truth or administer justice righteously. Amongst the followers of other faiths, there are also other people who do the same. This is the attitude which the entire world of religion should adopt today to improve the quality of relationship with other faiths. Religious peace cannot be achieved without cultivating such broad-minded, magnanimous, and humanly understanding attitudes towards the peoples of other faiths. Turning to social peace, the modern world seems far more aware and conscious of the rising levels of pollution in the material atmosphere than the rapidly rising levels of pollution in our social environment. A distorted concept of individual liberty, rendering one free from the discipline of a moral life, is being echoed across the world. To facilitate better adjustment of values in all spheres of life and to establish a just balance, religion advocates an ideology which declares that life on this earth is not just a short accidental span of consciousness which ends with death, but that there is eternal life to come hereafter. It emphasizes man's responsibilities in respect of his stewardship by constantly reminding him of the transitory character of this life and accountability in the afterlife. This single most important factor acts as a deterrent to crime, corruption, conspiracies, indiscipline, indiscriminate pursuit of pleasure, and all other social evils we find obtaining in the world today. If life is transitory in nature, it is also dynamic, and so are man and human society. One characteristic of that dynamism is that it generates friction, and in terms of social values, that means difference and very often dispute. To guard against friction and conflict, religion, especially Islam, lays the foundation of true universal brotherhood on the basis of man's relationship with his fellow beings through God, excluding all privilege and discrimination based on color, race, nationality, office, status, or wealth. Islam, as a religion, emphasizes the spirit of universal brotherhood at every turn. It permeates every section of Muslim society and establishes an egalitarian society based upon a practical expression of the truth that all creatures and servants that all men are creatures and servants of the same God and must, for his sake, and for the sake of winning his pleasure, live together as brethren. Islam enjoins absolute justice to all, be they friend or foe, in every sphere of human activity, and concedes no privilege on account of birth, family ties, tribal affiliations, or any other factor. True nobility, according to the Holy Quran, proceeds from righteousness and righteousness alone. It declares, "O mankind, we have created you from male and female, and we have made you into tribes and clans that you may recognize one another. Verily, the most honorable among you in the sight of Allah is he who is the most righteous among you. Surely Allah is all-knowing, all-aware. Chapter 49, verse 14. This verse does away with all discriminations and demolishes all barriers of race, color, clan, and tribe, so that man may unite and promote peace. The Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, famously declared that an Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, and that a white man is in no way better than a black man, or vice versa. It is the realization of universal brotherhood and the promotion of this concept of equality that can inspire a righteous people, a cohesive community, and ultimately a peaceful society. This is exactly what was witnessed at the birth of Islam. Over the Arabian Peninsula at the time, rapine, brutality, indiscipline, and the mad pursuit of pleasure were the order of the day. The absence of any form of organized government left life and property insecure. Bitterly divided into warring factions, the Arabs exhibited savagery that was restrained only by an urge to guard against retributive action from those who could muster a superior force. It was the acceptance of Islam that transformed their lives, uniting them in love for each other and love for their Creator. Their vice and wickedness were transformed into virtue and righteousness. Whereas before they were returning crude, beastly responses to their animal urges, now their cravings were refined into aspirations for the sublime. Women and slaves, previously oppressed and subjected to all manner of atrocities, were no longer maltreated and distributed as chattels of inheritance. And by recognizing the social status of women and their rightful place in society as mothers and wives, and by securing their rights in inheritance, in divorce, in the guardianship of the children, in the management of the affairs of the family, and in worship, Islam laid the foundations for peace in the family and, by extension, peace in society. Religion also has a role to play in the areas where the horizons of society and economy meet. Economic justice is a beautiful slogan common to both capitalism and socialism. In spite of this, we live in a world beset with economic challenges where private opulence sits alongside public decay, where the greed and deceit of financial institutions sits alongside the incompetence and mismanagement of government agencies, where economic unions are threatened with disintegration and economic exploitation has degenerated into modern-day slavery. Economic exploitation of one people or country by another inevitably leads to domination by the exploiters and develops into a threat to peace. The Holy Quran prohibits such exploitation and points out that an economy based on the exploitation of people and their resources cannot be beneficial in its consequences, nor can it endure. Only such economic development is beneficial and enduring as is based upon the exploitation of a country's own resources and on equitably sharing the bounties which God has provided for each people with others. The Islamic economic philosophy commences with this premise that all that is in the heavens and the earth has been created by God, who has bestowed upon man various provisions on trust. Therefore, the wealth of society does not belong to individuals as a capitalist might want, nor does it belong to society as a socialist may desire. It belongs to God Almighty, who alone has the right to decide on the methods of its distribution and to ordain injunctions to remove the vast disparities of wealth and poverty necessary for the establishment of economic peace. This injunction is encapsulated in the philosophy of zakat, which is the third pillar of Islam. The institution of zakat recognizes in principle the rights of the poor and the wealth of the rich and provides for the discharge of all those rights. Through zakat, the concept of alms giving, common to most religions, acquires a new outlook No longer does it complement the donor and embarrass the recipient. The recipient is only receiving his rightful share. The Holy Quran states, and in their wealth is a share belonging to the beggar and the destitute. Chapter 51, verse 40. In an interest-based global economy, the concept of interest has played havoc with the economic peace of many households, institutions, and even governments. As we saw with the so-called credit crunch and subprime crisis, the prohibition of interest is central to the economic philosophy of Islam. Allah loves beneficence towards the poor and the needy and the equitable distribution of wealth among people. The system of interest strikes at the heart of these blessings and leads to economic difficulties. This is no place to fully discuss the Islamic philosophy of zakat, but suffice it to say that zakat does away with the capitalist system of interest without sharing the problems of socialism. Zakat is levied on capital, not on income or profit, and as such provides a check for idle capital in the absence of interest. The motive force of interest is thus replaced by the driving force of zakat, replacing economic misery with economic peace. Failure of governments and political systems can cause misery and disaffection. The Arab Spring, which saw waves of discontent and protestations across many Arab and Muslim states, is an excellent case in point. In the domain of national peace, religion should furnish guidance to the rulers and the ruled alike. This is the case with Islam. It reminds the rulers that authority vested in them is a trust that should be discharged with honesty, and that government must be carried out in consultation with the people. To the rule, it says the power to choose rulers should be used appropriately so that governing authority is invested only in such persons fully deserving of it. And after choosing them, they must accord them full obedience and cooperation and refrain from demonstrations, industrial strife, disorder, and rebellion. The Holy Quran states, O ye who believe, obey Allah and obey His Messenger and those who are in authority among you. Chapter 4, verse 60. Obedience cuts at the roots of all kinds of rebellion and anarchy, and with this single injunction, the Holy Quran lays the foundation for national peace. In the sphere of international relations, religion and interreligious relations occupy a very important position and should play an effective role in promoting peace and unity rather than continue to be a source of friction and conflict. Even when a strong and powerful state avoids domination or exploitation of weaker states, its behavior and attitude towards them, if they savor of arrogance or contempt, can cause resentment, which could hinder good relations and imperil the maintenance of peace. The Holy Quran admonishes against such behavior, pointing out that the strength or weakness of a people is no indication or measure of their superiority or inferiority. Another source of international conflict is the divergence between proclaimed intentions and policies and actual practice and conduct. Doubts concerning motives and designs are bound to be raised about a state whose conduct is inconsistent with its undertakings and its proclaimed policies. From such conduct, a situation serious enough to endanger international relations can result. The Holy Quran therefore insists on complete conformity of conduct to declarations of intent. It states, O ye who believe, why do you say that which you do not? Most displeasing in the sight of Allah is that you should say what you do not. Chapter 61, verses 3 and 4. The objective of Islam in the international domain is to establish an association of states allied together in the pursuance of the maintenance of peace, freedom of conscience, and the promotion of human welfare. The object of all treaties, therefore, should be to further these purposes. A treaty should not be entered into with the intent of weakening or of taking advantage of the weakness of the other party. Subversive methods and exploitation of other people carried on under the cover of treaties and covenants are strongly condemned. With regard to international disputes, it is a duty laid upon Muslims to bring about peaceful settlement wherever and whenever they arise. If two Muslim states fail to settle their differences through friendly negotiations, and if differences become acute enough to constitute a threat to peace, it becomes the duty of other Muslims to exercise their good offices to bring about a settlement on an equitable basis. Should one of the parties be unwilling to avail itself of the good offices of the neutral states, or having done so, be unwilling to accept and carry out the terms of the settlement proposed, the neutral states must all combine to consider and adopt measures to compel the submission of the recalcitrant state. For this purpose, recourse may be had to the use of force if necessary. Islam regards war as an abnormal and destructive activity, a conflagration to which recourse should be had only as a last resort. Should war become unavoidable, every effort must be made to limit its horror and to bring hostilities to an end as early as possible. On the basis of the direct relationship between religion and peace, religion can play a catalytic role in conflict management and conflict resolution and be a real cornerstone to peacemaking, peace building, and peacekeeping. Secular methods and institutions are by themselves inadequate for the successful management of civil, rebel, racial, ethnic, and other types of intrastate conflicts. Religion goes one step further into the realm of conflict prevention by the eradication of poverty in all its manifestations and by promoting democratic governance, absolute morality, good neighborliness, and above all, true universal brotherhood. True brotherhood, in which man develops sensibility and sensitivity to the pain and suffering of others, can be established only by virtue of our relationship with one another through our God. Other factors, common interests, common pursuits, common occupations, may help foster friendship and brotherhood to a degree, but the very same factors may also engender jealousy, envy, and hostility. It is only the consciousness that mankind are all equally creatures of the same benevolent God, and that they must constantly seek the pleasure of God, that can bring about the realization of universal brotherhood, which can stand the test of all the contingencies to which life is subject. Turning to individual peace, there are many visible and palpable signs that the life of man is lacking in contentment, satisfaction, peace, and security. Man may deny the existence of God as he pleases, but he cannot deny the existence of an all-powerful nature which knows well how to punish the crimes committed against it. As we review the architecture and design of the interreligious, social, economic, national, and international edifices that religion, especially Islam, seeks to erect, we must also review the building blocks, which are the quality and character of the individual. The object of Islam is to establish a balance and to bring about accord in the relationship of man to his maker, the universe, and his fellow men. The quality and attitude of individual members of society play a most significant role in the creation of a peaceful or disorderly society. According to Islam, the purpose of man's creation was to create a consciousness and ultimately to improve, widen, and enhance the quality of that consciousness to its purpose of creation. That ultimate purpose of creation was to create a conscious being of the highest order who would not only submit to the most consummate beauty of God as reflected in his creation, but would also lead his fellow men to this ultimate goal of creation. The ultimate realization and shaping of one's life to this goal, according to Islam, is the ultimate peace. Just as the salmon cannot find peace until it returns to its place of origin, that is, its spawning ground, so too the human heart cannot find true peace without spiritually returning to its source of creation. This is the meaning of the Quranic verse. Those who believe and whose hearts find peace in the remembrance of Allah, because it is only in the remembrance of Allah that hearts can find peace. Chapter 13, verse 29. Without God, one cannot attain peace, and without individual peace, peace in society cannot be built. All human efforts to create peace from selfish ulterior motives are bound to fail. After having passed through the shattering and devastating experience of 2 world wars, and in the shadow of a nuclear holocaust, man continues to be the victim of discrimination, intolerance, and cruelty at the hands of his fellow man. By way of conclusion, therefore, unless and until international relations, national politics, economic systems, social policy, and individual choices are predominantly informed by religious, moral, and ethical values, man's quest for peace will be futile. Modernization, characterized by urbanization and industrialization, and the idea that humankind will be liberated by technological progress have not led to entirely positive results. Political unrest, environmental degradation, social violence, disparity between rich and poor, and discontentment continue to destroy peace and disturb order. In the face of science, logic, and materialism, religion should and does play a central role in the lives of many and act as a foundation for human relations, life, and thought. Many people turn to religion for strength and guidance in the midst of a rapidly changing world. To their followers, religious teachings are relevant and useful today despite and perhaps even because of the contemporary pressures of modernization and globalization. Religion can give the world a desperately needed renaissance from the extreme materialism and moral decay into which it has fallen. Religion widens one's sphere and ability to love, for the sake of God, not only one's fellow human beings, but the entire creation of God, and to develop sensibility and sensitivity to the pain and suffering of the downtrodden, the poor, the handicapped, abandoned children, the homeless, the refugees, and the innocent victims of violence. Prophets of God and founders of all major religions have endeavored to show us the path to a better future and peaceful coexistence. We must now, individually and collectively, strive continuously to deepen our consciousness of the duties we owe to each other at the moral and spiritual levels. For Muslims, and indeed for all mankind, Islam seeks to stimulate and deepen that consciousness. It draws the attention of mankind towards fulfilling both the rights of God and the rights of God's creation. It emphasizes our duties and obligations so that each of us, by due discharge of them, should help to safeguard freedom, justice, and equality for all, and should promote and foster human welfare, prosperity, and peace in all spheres of life: social, economic, political, moral, and spiritual. Islam teaches and insists upon the comprehension and acceptance of the unity of God, which results in the unity and coordination of creation and the unity and equality of man. Indeed, these must become compulsive if chaos, confusion, and commotion are to be avoided, and peace, prosperity, and propriety in all spheres of life are to be promoted. Postmodern society has a lot to offer by way of vibrant pluralism, cultural life, and economic advantages. But, divorced from religion, modern industrialized cultures are lacking in ethical, moral, and spiritual values essential for the establishment and maintenance of peace and harmony at all levels of human existence. As we explore the complexities of religious expressions today, as well as the phenomenology of religions, we conclude that religion can play a vital, positive, and indispensable role in achieving peace and harmony necessary and sufficient for the material, moral, and spiritual progress of man. The words of His Holiness, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the Khalifa and worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, provides a fitting conclusion to this discourse. Addressing the US Congress on Capitol Hill, he emphasized the need for religion and religious code of conduct in the following terms. It is important to always remember that human knowledge and intellect are not perfect, but in fact limited. Thus, when making decisions or forming thoughts, often certain factors enter human minds which can cloud judgment and lead to a person trying to fulfill his own rights. Ultimately, this can lead to an unjust outcome or decision being made. God's law, however, is perfect, and so no vested interest or unfair provisions exist. This is because God only desires for the good and betterment of his creation, and therefore his law is based entirely on justice. The day the people of the world come to recognize and understand this crucial point will be the day the foundations for true and everlasting peace will be laid. May Allah so ordain and bless us all profoundly. Respected Chairman, Respected Chairman, ladies, gentlemen, thanks for having me. Wassalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullah. We owe Tommy Kallon a debt of gratitude for his provoking and inspiring speech on our